The Golden State Warriors have really picked it up since acquiring Jimmy Butler, and I know everybody is making videos and talking about this team right now. I know it's a hot topic, but I just want to put in what I said, what I think about this because bef- before the season started, I wrote down what I think the standings were going to look like, just predicting. And I was not a Warriors believer, and I was looking right up until the Jimmy Butler trade happened before the All Star break. I had the Warriors as the 12th seed in the Western Conference, was going to be my prediction because I just didn't believe in this team anymore. I thought that Curry was still good, but it's just Curry. I mean, their second best player going into the year, it seemed like was going to be Draymond Green, isn't who's a good defender, not the same defender he once was, but if your second best player is Draymond and he isn't really giving you much on the offensive side, like scoring wise, then I thought it was going to be rough, especially since I figured that Jonathan Kuminga wasn't going to start just because of how Steve Kerr is and what they how he just runs his team and the fact that neither really him or Draymond should be center, and none of them are also shooting guards, so they can't really play too much together. But yeah, I had them as the 12th seed. I had pretty much everybody above them. I had the Rockets above them. I had the Kings above them. I even had the Pelicans above them, which I was obviously completely wrong about that. But um, I just didn't believe the before this Jimmy Butler trade happened, the Warriors were not in the playoffs. They were the 11th or 12th seed. It was bad. Steph Curry has had a bad season up until the Jimmy Butler trade had happened, and it was just looking rough. He was still an all-star, and I really do think that the fact that even because he started, it was because they were in San Francisco, and he is still the um he's still Stephen Curry. He's still the greatest shooter ever. He's only averaging 24, 6, and 4 this year, which is really down. It's pretty much his worst year since, well, the 1920 season is the year he only played 5 games and got hurt, but I mean, it's really his worst year since his third or fourth year in the league, which is when he was really not even the player that he was looked to be. And I just didn't like what I've seen. There were so many times that I would watch a Golden State Warriors game this year, and there would be a game where I would look, he would have 28 points and it would be a good game, or he would have like 13 points and would be like 1 for 9 from 3. So I have not been a fan of Curry at all this season. It's been rough. I mean, even last week on the Hoops All in Main channel, we did our top 10 point guards, and I had Curry as my sixth best point guard this year. I had guys like Damian Lillard. I even had Cade Cunningham above him because of just what they have been able to do this year, as well as the obvious guys like Shea Brunson. But it's just been a rough year for the Warriors, and they got a hold of Jimmy Butler. They gave up Andrew Wiggins, Lindy Waters, and some other guys that they shouldn't really care too much about, like Kyle Anderson, who was only there for half the season. Um, but it once Jimmy Butler got to this team, and he has played about um I think it's been about 8 to 9 games, and they are 7-1 with Jimmy Butler. It's looked great. They have jumped from the 11 to 12 seed to they are now they are tied for they're in the 7th seed, but they're tied with the Clippers, who are also they have the exact same record, but they are the 6th seed. So they could jump from maybe not being a playoff team at all to missing the play-in if they stay in that 6th spot, and they've got a lot of work to do if they wanna get higher than 6 because the Rockets are 5 games above them, and then everyone else is just above them, but Curry's averaged about 30 points since, about 30 points since the Jimmy Butler trade. Again, they're 7-1, and the question is, are they a contender now, or are they still a pretender where it's like and a pretender to me basically is like, oh yeah, they're good. They're a good team, but they just don't have what it takes to be considered a real contender out west anymore. And I do think that the Warriors obviously they're better with Jimmy Butler because it's a talent upgrade. It's a it's just a better overall fit for the team. Um, I don't think they are still contenders. I think they are a team that fall into like a Lakers situation over the past few years, or even this year with like the Timberwolves, where I don't want to see the Warriors in the first round if I'm a higher seed team like Denver or OKC or, anyone like that, or Memphis, who's also the 2 seed right now. I don't wanna see the Warriors just because they kind of with the team they have now, they kind of have a shot to beat you in that first round, and depending on who's in that second round, they could maybe even beat you in the second round or make the second round at least interesting and tire you out, which you don't wanna do, especially if you are a 1-2 seed, which is where they might which is who they might face off if they do stay in this play-in range, but I just don't think that, um I just still don't think that the Warriors team is that good, to be honest. They haven't had Kuminga since they've had Jimmy Butler and even before, so maybe that'll give them a little bit better of a boost, even though, again, 7-1 and is since Jimmy Butler is great, and he's really showed his value, but, um also, it's not just right, it's not just Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler has been an all-star before. He brought the Heat to 2 finals, the bubble finals and the, finals versus, Denver, where they were an 8 seed and they had to beat 3 higher seeds to get to them, and they worked for it, but obviously their team was just never good enough. But Jimmy Butler's will and his work ethic was a big motor behind them getting to those finals. And you throw that on a team like the Warriors, where they were really lacking somebody that could be that gritty guy, and right, Draymond Green is that. You guys are, I know everyone's saying they have Draymond Green. That's literally what Draymond Green is known for, is being gritty, doing the dirty work, and being all pretty much all defense and not much offense. But when you put two of those guys on one team together, um, it it just ignites everything. It fires the other people up who maybe aren't great defenders to, buy in a little bit or take lead after some guys like that. And the biggest thing that Jimmy Butler adds to the Warriors that I'm sure everyone has noticed is the rim pressure, the amount of times he gets to the free throw line. He's had most of Jimmy Butler's great games, great performances, whether they're playoffs or just the regular season. If he has a super high scoring 40, 50-point game, he probably has a good at least 18 to 25 free throws in that game. And he's a good free throw shooter too. So, um, the fact that Jimmy Butler can come in and add that to a Golden State Warriors team who has been known since Curry's been winning his MVPs that they are going to be a top 3, top 5, three-point shooting team in the league. The volume that they get up, the efficiency that they get up, because whether they had Curry, Clay, and Green with the first championship, or when they added the greatest scorer of all time, Kevin Durant. Like they just had everything to beat you from the 3-point line, and I really thought that the Warriors should be looking away from that in a case of you still need to implement it. You still have the greatest shooter of all time on your team. He's one of the hardest people ever to guard because of his stamina and how he runs around the court and just the eyes that he attracts. But he isn't a he doesn't get to the free throw line a lot. He doesn't draw fouls like elite players should. And again, Jimmy Butler is literally like the opposite of what Stephen Curry does because Jimmy Butler, he can shoot, he can do things like that, but he again, just the fact that he gets to the rim. I mean, Curry doesn't even get 4 free throws a game just because that's not his style. He's more of a fragile like player. He's not a very big body. He's strong in a case of how he can, push off and how he can get around people, but he's not like I want to go into the rim. I'm going to draw all these fouls or I'm going to dunk on you or anything like that. It's like he'll do his floaters, he'll do his high arcing layups that he is notorious for doing, but he just doesn't get to the rim like you would hope. And when he is really the only good player that they had that and didn't have really a co-star up until this point, I knew it was going to be rough. And adding a guy like Jimmy to do the dirty work, get down and gritty, draw contact, even take the eyes off of Steph Curry because oh hey, we can't just have a all eyes on Curry now because Jimmy Butler can create for himself and he can get downhill and attract eyes too, just because of how good of a slasher and how good he is at getting to the rim. So, um, and with them adding Butler, their limit for me this season, I kind of already said it before. I think that they could get to the second round, but I think that once they get to the second round, again, it depends on who they play because playoffs is all matchup based. Um, and now they have a defensive guy that they can throw on to guards, and like in Jimmy Butler's case, or Draymond can guard the bigger wings or fives if he needs to as well. So it's all matchup based, but I'm just gonna go based on what they currently are. If the season ended and they win their first playoff game, they would be the 7 seed and they would be playing the 2 seed, which is actually the Denver Nuggets now. It was the Grizzlies after last night, but the Grizzlies lost and the Nuggets won. So they would be playing the Nuggets in the first round. I don't think they win that series just because of what we've seen Denver do. Denver has the best player in the game. They have more. They just have more pieces that can do more on their team. Considering if everybody is healthy, which I always say that you can't just go off of because it's a very rare, especially in the playoffs, that every single person is healthy on both sides. So, but even if Aaron Gordon is out for the Nuggets, I mean Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., what you're getting from Russ this season, what you're getting. I mean, Christian Brown, some of the young guys have stepped up too. Like the the Nuggets would have the best player in that series for sure. But then the Warriors would probably have 2 and 3. But then after that, I think like 4 through like 7 is all Nuggets, and we know, especially in recent history, that a name just can't win. Names won't just win you series. Um, Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie, Katie, Harden, they didn't have much success. They weren't also together for that long. I mean, Booker, Beal, and Durant. I mean, they're names that they're good players, but they just don't fit perfectly together. So I would have the Warriors losing that series. But say if the Grizzlies do pop back into that 2 seed, and the Warriors stay at 7, I could see a world where they beat Memphis, but then that means in the second round, they would be going up against the winner of Nuggets versus Clippers as of now, and it would probably be the Nuggets, and again, like I just said, the Nuggets, I'm picking them to beat the Warriors 10 times out of 10, whether they have Jimmy Butler on the team or not, so I think that it's been great, but I don't think that just because the first 8 games of Jimmy Butler has been perfectly great, and Jimmy Butler's been good except for last game, but Curry had 56 points, so that you kinda get a pass when a player has almost 60 that you didn't score a lot, but I don't think that I think that they're gonna have still some rough times for the rest of this regular season because they're not gonna win out. They're not gonna only lose 1 or 2 more games the rest of this regular season. They're just not that they're just not that much better than the teams around them, even with adding Jimmy Butler, and they also don't have a center that you would trust, right? So, I don't even know what the lineup has been recently, but, like, and whatever whoever they are playing as shooting guard, whether it's Moses Moody, Buddy Hield, or AirPods, and then Jimmy and Draymond. Their five has been like Quentin Post, who, I mean, if you're going up against Denver or something like that, or even Houston, pretty much anybody with a real center. I'm not scared of what Quentin Post can do, or Kevon Looney, or Trace Jackson Davis, even though Tracy hasn't been playing recently a lot for them for whatever reason, even though I think he's the best center on their team. But and then even if you do go get Kaminga back and you have Draymond slide down to the five, Draymond's like 6'6". He's not gonna be able to do a lot versus a 7-foot Jokic or a 6'11", 6'10" Sengun or a 7-foot Chet Holmgren. Like I just think that this team is still capped. They are definitely better. They're not missing the playoffs anymore, like I thought they were going to without him. But I still don't think that they have what it takes to beat these upper echelon. The Thunder, the Nuggets. Honestly, I'm taking the Lakers over them too, even with their newly acquired pieces. They're probably better than the Clippers, I would give them that, especially if Kawhi isn't playing, and then Memphis and Houston, to me, they're toss-ups. They could win or lose that series, and it wouldn't be too surprising to me just because Memphis and Houston are kind of weird teams where they're a piece away or they're not, they're young and they haven't had a whole lot of time in the playoffs yet, but that's how I think that the Warriors season will go. I think they'll stay around the 6 to 8 mark. They might make a competitive win their first round, but after that, I can't see them doing much else.